back to the Anochi podcast. Today, we're going to be trading places. I'm going to be interviewing Adam. We're going to be talking about masculinity and the struggles that come with it, with men, and in today's world. Let's
Cool.
go.
Let's go.
Let's go right into it. So, Adam, you've been working with men for almost 13 years. And a question that I have for you is what have you seen with men being disconnected from their masculinity, from their essence, from their truth? What has your experience been around that?
Okay. So, first of all, 13 years, that's pretty crazy actually, because 13 years is the age of bar mitzvah, which is like the idea of becoming a man. So, in our 13-year mark, we could finally say
All right.
that we're sort of getting a hold of this masculinity thing, which has been a lot of our focus in the last little while because we've really shifted into targeting who are we really able to help? Who is Adam and Nachman really able to help? And that's Jewish Orthodox men who are disconnected, as you're saying. So to me, what disconnection really means is approaching your life from the outside in. Is I'm looking at circumstance and I'm reacting to circumstance. I'm showing up to circumstance as it's coming to me. And it doesn't always look like rock bottom. And what it looks like is you could be checking all the boxes for success. It could be the religious guy with the wife, the kids, the job, but you're not able to really embrace and experience all of that in a feel good type way. So disconnected is really, at some point in time, I started realizing that I'm acting more out of pressure rather than presence and showing up to life as it comes to me rather than holding to my center of who I am and approaching life from the inside out, which is really what we're trying to teach people. We're trying to teach people to come back into alignment. This is who I am. Look at your challenges, look at your life, and experience it either from the challenges from a connected place to who I am, or even the good things that I have in my life, to approach it from a place of I'm feeling connected to this life.
Right. Wow. And a high level, I'm not asking you to go into too many details, but what's the process? So if I'm living a disconnected life and I'm living unconsciously, how could what are the steps, or what do I need to do to get closer to who I really am and start living a more conscious life and more authentic masculine space and life for myself and my family?
So I guess really the question is, why aren't I feeling connected to my life? And what connection to me means is, how do I feel about my life? When I say feelings, well, as men, we're taught be strong, don't cry, man up, do what you got to do, take responsibility. And so the idea of disconnection to me means a full blown expression with my mind, my heart, and my body to the life that I have. And really, where that all goes wrong, so to speak, is in childhood. In childhood, at some point in time, and it happens to everyone, it does. Unless you have 100% parents that have worked out all their stuff and they know exactly how to approach every situation of life, which they don't, not even I do, you're going to tell your kid to stop feeling. Whether you're saying it based on directly saying to them, hey, we're not screaming anymore. There's no place or time to cry right now. You need to man up. You need to just do this. Or my parents weren't emotionally in tune with themselves, so they didn't model what it means to experience feelings. And like I always say to people, is you don't really have problems in life. You just have feelings that you don't want to feel. And that's what I find is the number one reason that people will come to us to work with us is they want to feel connected to their lives, or they're struggling because their problem seems much bigger than what they can face. And so they're running away from their feelings. You know how people run away from their feelings. They're distracted, they're on their phones, they're doing drugs, alcohol, etc., etc. Everything in order to capture this good feeling or this pleasure for a moment because it's too hard to face all the stuff that they didn't work out growing up.
So you're saying that in order the process is in a few words, the process is understanding where my disconnection lies and facing what I have to face in life. And even if it's uncomfortable, face that discomfort. And I'm just wondering, in today's day and age, it's so hard to do that. So yeah, I am disconnected, but all my friends are disconnected. All my friends are vaping. All my friends, wherever I hang out, we make big parties, so food is a big deal, and people go on the internet. And how do I actually change myself to become that man and become back into my full alignment?
Well, first you have to understand why we would want to change ourselves. Like a lot of people, life is good. I always say good is the enemy of great. But the first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge where you're at. So I could be having all the things in my life in a good place. And what would be the real reason to want to change myself or to work on myself? Generally, what I've found is that people come to me with a struggle and they're saying, "Oh, I'm doing all the right things, but I can't seem to make money." Or, I'm doing everything for my wife, but she's still miserable and she still fights with me. Or I have tutors in place. I send my kids to the right school. I've spent tons of money and I try to do homework with my kids, but they're still struggling. And so people will come to us with struggles because the struggles seem a little bit too much to handle. And then we try to bring them back to, well, what's the main thing is where am I generating my life from? Where am I generating the experience of my life from? And that takes a real hard look at acknowledging, okay, wait a second, where am I at as a person?
Right.
So, for example, um, you're saying, why would a person want to do that? The first thing that they're gonna come to an ability to start coming back into alignment or working on themselves is by saying, okay, I have a good life. Let's just say for that guy, but I'm just not feeling connected to it.
Right.
That acknowledgement is the beginning of a journey to a new way of experiencing life.
So it's not just people that are hitting rock bottom. It's anybody that wants to raise their standard and they know that internally something is a little off. I need some tools to help me raise my standard.
Yeah, well, most people aren't going to come to work with us because they have a great life or they have a good life. They'd rather spend money on going on vacation or, a new exercise machine or a fancy car or a good watch, whatever it's going to be. Most people aren't going to really value that, which is why we attract so many people with a real struggle. And they're really almost being humbled by their struggle, like, "Oh, this is so much for me." Most people are going to come because they just want to be a better version of themselves or they just want to continue to get better. That's more rare. But we're also seeing that more people are looking to just grow. Like you see in the world, there's more distractions than ever. At the same time, there's more mindfulness than ever. 10 years ago, 13 years ago, when we started doing this, you weren't normal if you went to a therapist, which is why you had to hide it. Today, you're not normal if you don't go to a therapist. So I think just as much distraction and disconnection there is based on pills and all sorts of things, which by the way aren't even working today for kids. I'm noticing that parents are putting their kids on ADHD pills and the anxieties and just they're not working. The kid it becomes a zombie, a robot, and so on and so
Wow.
forth. But the idea that there is way more of this light or enlightenment coming to the world is why we're in the right place at the right time. It's almost like we've been doing this for 13 years in order to prepare for this moment.
Wow. I love that idea. Love that idea. So I guess the question to that I would ask anybody is, and I would ask you is, what is the cost of being disconnected?
Yeah.
Like, what is that going to cost me in my marriage? Or is that an internal question that I have to ask myself?
I think it's different for it's an individual thing, but the cost is that you're not there. Is that you never get to experience the life that you have. And so when you say, okay, you have the good life and everything in it, how do you feel about it? How's your practice in gratitude? Like, what does that look like? Are you constantly able to take in the goodness of life? Are you constantly able to give that goodness to others?
Wow. Wow. So what you're saying is come to that awareness of I'm sick of having a certain standard of my life. There's a certain place in my life that I'm not happy with, and I want to work on this. And you're saying is get the awareness of where you pick this up from. And you mentioned as a child, I picked it up because my parents weren't in tune. Um, it- some people would argue maybe that it's not just from childhood. Could it happen during teenage years or even adult life where you put yourself in a situation where you're being abused or hurt for many years, and that could have a big effect on you as well.
So it's a good question. I wouldn't say that I have to necessarily come to the awareness of where it came from. That's not the initial step. The initial step is just come to the awareness that this is where I'm living my life from. Like I have certain beliefs about life, about myself, about the world, and I'm filtering it as I say to people is circumstance through my mind equals my experience. So how am I processing the life that I have? When I make money, am I like totally grateful and appreciating the blessing, or am I being like, okay, this is not enough, I need more? And just start to tune in how I'm experiencing life, where am I generating my life from, and then we can work on maybe where it came from. I wouldn't say it has to come from your childhood because not everyone's able to necessarily get that on their first go around, but I can confidently say that yes, it came from your childhood. Reason it is just from the perspective of how we're born. We're born with less cognitive faculties than we are with emotional faculties. A baby is born, the way they communicate is by crying. Is It's an emotional response. It's a primal drive that a baby has, and it communicates primarily through emotions. Up until like really age 2, you're not really saying things, and even when you are saying things, you're just copying whatever's being given over to you. So a baby, like I said, before a man experiences life from the outside in, a baby experiences life from the outside in. It's absorbing like a sponge all the information that's coming around them. So that's not only the information, but that's also the programs that I take on. Come to age 7 is when kids really start to have this idea of struggles because they have to go into grade 1 and they have to face other people. There's bullying involved. There's one teacher at the head of the class. I'm sitting him at a desk and so on and so forth. That's when you're going to start to see struggles with kids. But when do I really develop my cognitive faculties to its fullest to be able to make decisions and live life responsibly? It's like this is when it really happens is age 13. It's a bar mitzvah. Your godly soul comes down and says, okay, now you're responsible for life, for your actions, for your mitzvahs. When do I really get that? Well, it's going to happen at probably 18, 19, 20. And when am I really going to feel that? Well, probably when I get married. Because when I get married, there's no running and hiding anymore. I got to face what's in front of me because my second half is mirroring to me all my deficiencies, all my problems, all my struggles. And you see, most people don't stay married. Like the divorce rate in the world is over 60%.
Wow.
The reason is because they have no awareness of what they're doing in that process, of why they're getting married, of what marriage is all about in general. So again, a kid absorbs life from the outside in, and then at some point I have to realize that I'm doing that and start to recognize that I have the ability to change the way life was given to me, which is self-awareness, working on yourself and making conscious decisions. But most people don't get to that place until they're hit with a real struggle where they have to. It's almost like the awakening, the humbling.
But you're also saying that like there's a 60% divorce rate. So even those people don't even get humbled. They just get divorced instead of
Yeah, because
dealing
it's
with it.
easy. It's easy to get divorced. It's easier to get divorced than to have to face myself.
I
And
found like with friends that have gotten divorced, thinking that life is going to be better, life actually got harder. Life actually got more lonely, more disconnected, and thinking that if I get divorced, life is going to be a much better place because my husband or my wife is not triggering me anymore. So what we're saying is that the trigger really is your best friend. When your wife triggers you, that's an opportunity to look at it as something for me to work on.
it's my trigger in the end of the day. My trigger means that it's my emotional hardship around what's happening in front of me. And when you hit that emotional hardship is when you have an opportunity to go inward, start approaching life from the inside out and see, why am I being triggered right now? What is happening right now that I'm feeling the need to blow up on my wife or blow up on my kid or shut down or totally freeze or go to a people pleasing
Right.
mode?
And this is what you said before, just a few minutes ago, about my experience of life is through the lenses of how I forgot. I didn't.
Circumstance through my mind equals my experience.
Right. So when my wife says something to me and I'm triggered because I'm I'm looking at it from my experience. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that if I could just make a distinction and chain and work on that trigger, then all of a sudden my wife and I are going to be a much better relationship.
Well, yeah, and that's with everything in life. Everything in life is how I going back to the beginning. How am I generating my life? Where am I generating it from? When I get triggered by my wife, let's say, or triggered by my job, or triggered by my kids, what am I telling myself in this moment about the situation? She's putting me down. My kids don't respect me. My boss doesn't respect me. Okay, that might be true that they don't respect you, but why am I getting emotional about it? And you say, oh, because they're disrespecting. It's not because they're disrespecting you. I mean, if someone comes to you today and says, Nachman, you have ugly purple eyes, what are you going to feel about that?
Nothing,
Why do you feel nothing about that?
because I know it's not true.
And if you know something's not true, it has no emotional charge to it.
Right.
As soon as we start feeling something, which is again, life is about recognizing where you're generating your feelings of your life, and you're realizing that there's something coming, there's a message coming down here. I'm feeling the need to react over here. All of a sudden, someone hit a truth inside of you. That's what a trigger is. They hit a truth. So when you think your wife doesn't respect you, or your kids, or your boss, it's not really that the problem is that they don't respect you. They may very well not respect you, but it's I'm buying into the fact that I'm not respectable.
And why would I buy into that?
Again,
Because I don't
these are the
respect
these are the
myself.
programs that you got growing up. So all you're doing is repeating an old story in your present life.
Right. Right. So I'm tapping into that programming of me not respecting myself. So fine. So now I notice there's something that happened at work. I think I'm disrespected. Now what am I supposed to do with that?
So the first step is saying, "Hey, I'm triggered by this. Why? Because my boss is disrespecting me. Therefore, I'm buying into his belief, and I must have a struggle around believing that I deserve respect."
So it's
Okay.
my issue.
Yeah. So it's my
Okay.
issue with the issue that's happening.
Okay.
It's my issue with the issue.
Okay.
So let's say I have this issue that I'm feeling something around that respect. So now with that issue comes a feeling, which feelings that are unresolved, which is really what we're after in our childhood, end up becoming the triggers in our adult life. So we're being met with that being triggered in order to work through something, to strengthen my own belief around myself, to realize that I got this program from somewhere else to work through. It's like I was probably 12 years old and I took karate. My parents put me into karate. And I was holding up this bag or whatever it was, the pad for someone to hit into me, and they would like kick into you. And this girl kicks into that pad, and I go flying. And I just was completely embarrassed and shamed. She went to my school, that girl. I went to school like the next day. I'm in the cafeteria, and this girl and her friends come up to me, and they're like, "Do you do karate?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I totally denied the fact that I did karate. I never showed up again. And then I told my parents, "Yeah, I don't want to go to karate anymore." And like, okay, and never worked through that. So I had this complex around me being strong. And what did that lead to? Which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but what it led to was me needing to be strong, working out. That's when I basically started working out and believing in working out. Now, is there anything wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with me working out because a girl kicked me over?
Yeah, there could be some unhealthy attachment to it.
Yeah,
Like
why? I mean, why should that be a problem?
you're not because maybe you're not necessarily working out solely for real reasons to be healthy yourself, but you're working out so that you could cover up that a girl hit you and you don't want to ever be embarrassed by a girl instead of facing the fact that you did get embarrassed by a girl and breathe and feel into that emotion around being embarrassed by that girl.
But what if I start feeling into that emotion and I'm like, okay, I don't need to work out anymore?
Maybe, maybe not, but meaning the outcome that you're working out is a good thing.
Yeah. Sometimes, like we were saying before, we could have all good outcomes on the outside, but it's where am I generating that from? So if I would generate it from, like you're saying, feeling that I want to be healthy, okay, fantastic. I want to take care of my body. I want to be in shape. I want to be someone who feels good about myself, rather than generating it from, oh my God, if I don't work out, I'm screwed. Like people are going to know me as weak. So I'm building up this nice body and, being strong, but it comes from the pressure of thinking that I'm not good enough or thinking that I'm a loser or thinking that I'm weak, which generates my life experience. So what happens on a day that I don't work out, or what happens when I am out of shape? Well, how do I feel about myself? How do I relate to myself? And I can only feel good about myself and strong when I'm working out,
Right,
which means the connection to what I'm doing on the outside is unhealthy.
right,
So even if it's a good outcome, it's unhealthy because my truth is not connected to it. My truth is I'm an amazing, unbelievable person who has so much to give and spread in the world. And when I'm believing that I'm a loser and therefore I have to work out, that's not aligned to who I am. That's a problem. So I can be doing healthy things from an unhealthy place.
so how do I transition or how do I change myself from working out from an unhealthy place to working out from a healthy place?
Good. So let's say when I was 12 years old, I got kicked by the girl. I came home. I said, Dad, this is the story. This is what happened. And he came to me, and it wasn't necessarily that I couldn't have created this. I just didn't feel the confidence to go and speak to him about this. But let's say I would have said, hey, like, I got kicked by a girl. Can you guide me here? What do I do with this? And he would have said, hey, that kind of stuff happens. And there are some girls that are pretty damn strong. And this is an opportunity for you to get stronger and to show you something, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about. This is just part of the program. This is part of the class. And you got this. And I believe in you and you can do this. If I would have opened up that conversation, then maybe I'd be an expert in karate today. Like, who
Right.
knows? Could have changed the whole course of my life. But let's say I didn't. Okay. And let's say my father wasn't available, like, for those people. So now I got to go and work through that because I'm still generating one aspect of my life from an unhealthy place.
So now, what does it mean to work through that? So fast forward 20 years, you're 32 years old, or you're 40 years old, or whatever age you're at, and you're still holding on to this insecurity, to this limiting belief. Let's say you're still holding on to it, and you always have to be the strong one. Let's say, and now you're triggered, and now you want to work through it and drop it. So what you're saying is, I have the awareness that I'm being triggered. I realize that it's all me, that I'm being disrespected or whatever. I disrespect myself. And now what can I do from that point to move forward, to change that paradigm?
I'm only going to have a certain motivation to change that if I'm struggling with something that's coming from that limiting belief. So people are going to work through that either when they're already working on themselves and they that emerges and just comes up and I need to work through it, or I'm facing something that's mirroring that 12-year-old experience. Like
So
someone,
how do I work through it?
okay,
That's
so how do I work through it? Well, again, if I go back to the 12-year-old kid and I would have come home and I would have spoken to my father, well, what would have happened was I wouldn't have held on to that unresolved emotion,
right.
which I said we have unresolved emotions, not problems in life. If I would have, and it would have been gone, I would have been back to karate, we would have been fine. I wouldn't have held on to a belief about myself that I'm weak and I'm a loser and I'm embarrassed and so on and so forth. So a person will almost revisit that. It's like this idea of inner child work. Inner child work means I go back to the part of me that was unresolved, and through meditation, through a different type of process that would push us back into our unconscious, the things that we hold inside that we're not consciously aware of all the time, and feel what it feels like as a 12-year-old boy and you're embarrassed and you got shamed and people are asking you in school, and then you sort of have to run away with it, run away from that, and not even talk to those people, and those people know you're full of whatever because you actually they know you were at the karate, so like I wouldn't have to lie and feel what it feels like as a kid that you had to hold on to all that. And sometimes it's as easy as just that little kid just feeling into that and nothing has to happen, and you're, let's say holding space. What are you holding space for? Holding space for a part of you that's unresolved. You're just being there. Imagine sitting down next to a kid and saying, okay, what'd you go through? Feel what you felt. Okay, open up to it. And maybe you cry, maybe you scream, maybe, whatever emotional response needs to happen, that you could let go of the energy that's stuck inside you that keeps you away from experiencing things in life, because you might have to feel that emotion again. That's how we guard ourselves. I don't want to feel that emotion again, so I'm going to create a circumstance of life that I don't have to. I'm
So
going
you're
to have
saying
big
is
muscles.
so you're saying is I have to go back and feel that emotion that I should have felt,
Yeah.
give it space, and then start releasing that limiting belief. So it's getting really vulnerable. It's getting really
Yeah, and you can do it with yourself. You can do it with somebody else. So I always suggest doing it with somebody else to be there for you. But most men are, as they're taught to be strong, they don't create or make space for that. And then when their wives talk to them about their feelings, so you're like, they're clueless. They don't know what to do with it, and they want to fix it. They want to just, okay, how do I get to the next step? How do I make this better? And same with their kids. And they're repeating the pattern of, because I couldn't feel my feelings, no one else around me in my life can, because that's scary, and
wow,
there's no space for that, and I don't
wow.
even know what that looks like. It's scary because I don't know what it looks like. It's scary because it was never done for me.
Right. So now I sit with another man and I breathe through it and I feel the emotions and I let it go. And what you're telling me is that I'm almost changing my personality. I'm changing everything about me.
Well, in a certain sense, it's not going to happen on your first try, but you're going to let go of the intensity, and what the intensity of the emotion causes, it causes a reaction. And what a reaction is I have to do this. I have to react in this way or show up to this scenario in this way because I don't feel an ability for any other way of this that this is supposed to happen. Like I don't see any other options. So if my again going back to let's say if someone were to call me weak today, if someone were to say, you know, you're weak, that would trigger inside of me that old wound. It would hurt and I would have to either yell at them, shut down, go into a depressed place. But if I see that as an opportunity to say, okay, wow, this person told me that I'm weak and I don't feel so much intensity around it, well, maybe I can start to work out. And that was just a nice reminder and doesn't have to hold so much energy inside of me, doesn't have to hold so much pressure. So when I'm feeling through the emotion, I'm letting go of the intensity of it. I'm letting go of the pressure of it. I'm letting go of how much it means to me. I'm letting go of how much it defines me. That feeling that I felt as a child, and the more emotional charge, the more energy it has, it is the more hold it has on my limiting beliefs about who I am. So the more intense it is, the more limited I feel, the more I need to react and not to respond to life anymore. I don't
Well, that's
have free
that's
choice
that's a great point. You're saying the more intense the emotion, the more limited I am.
in that area.
Wow. And what happens? So now I make these changes. I go to a workshop or I go to a coach or I have a men's group that I work through stuff. Is there an adjustment period for myself and for people around me because people are almost not going to recognize a certain part of me?
Yeah, so healing happens like this. Healing happens that when I let go of that intensity, it's not like I go home and my wife changed and she's not going to trigger that part of me or my kids or my coworkers or the guy in shul. What happens is it becomes less intense, so it doesn't hold so much of the need to react, but I'm going to get triggered there because healing happens when I can take that trigger and work on it. Now, how do you work on a trigger if you're not getting triggered? How do you work on that energy that needs to move out of your system if it's not being activated? So healing is messy. It doesn't look like this, you know, wrapped up present box and handed over and said, "Okay, you went to a workshop, you're healed. See you later. You're great." No, it happens that your wife's gonna trigger you, and you're gonna think that you're not respectable again, and then you're gonna have to breathe into yourself to slow down and say, "Wait a second, what's happening for me right now?" The moment I breathe into a moment, I can start to become aware of what's happening for me right now, and I can start to move into making new choices. Life is not a choice when I'm too emotionally triggered. Life only happens to be a choice when I can let go of the intensity of the emotional charge that sits inside of me. That's why I say I'm not reacting anymore. I'm coming to a place where I can choose. Doesn't mean you're not going to screw up again and react. You
so
keep
so
keep on
essentially,
working on it.
essentially what you're saying is that when I come home, I'm going to be this not perfect husband, but a much better, and it's only going to be a win-win. Like my wife is going to see this as something beautiful, and she's going to be happy with the changes, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, but she's not going to treat you like that at the beginning because she's going to doubt it. She's been experiencing 10 years of you reacting on her. So
Right.
she's going to be like, "What happened to you?" And sometimes it's actually going to put your process that you're in even more down because you're like, "Hey, you're supposed to be my partner. Aren't you supporting me? I'm trying to make changes over here." And she's acting from a state of her own trauma, which is fear of trusting that you could be this good version of yourself because you've been hurting me all this while that we were in relationship. You know, you couldn't take criticism from me. I have things that my wife says to me, like, even though she's like I'll say something to her and then she'll be like, is it which where's this coming from? And she's doubting whether it's coming from a good place or not, and that's only because it wasn't coming for a good from a good place for so many years.
Wow.
So she's going to challenge it, whether out of fear or out of real desire to trust. Like,
I find that a woman challenging something is because ultimately what they want is safety. So they're going to challenge it until they feel safe. And once she feels safe, she'll stop challenging it.
Yeah.
So there is a transition period. There is a period of, okay, I'm coming home a new man in a certain area because I'm working on myself every week. And people around me also have to start getting used to the new me.
And safety is a big one because there's no timeline for it. It's not like you could say, well, if you do this 3 times and you click your heels, then everything's going to be good. Healing happens at the speed of safety. I say this a lot. Healing
Healing
happens at
happens.
the speed of safety. So when my wife really feels safe, then the healing's happened because I'm not going to that. It can pop up for a second and she can say, okay, this is not what it is. I can trust this relationship. I trust this person. This is who I'm meant to be with. He's not really attacking me. He's just triggered or in an angry place, blah, blah, blah. Or, even the love that's given over, or when I compliment my wife, can she take it in? Can she receive it? It happens at the speed of safety.
Healing happens at the speed of safety. What a good line. Like I could get vulnerable and I could humble myself if I feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's where the healing happens. When I'm willing to get really real and humble with myself, that's where the healing is. That's where the transformation is.
That's for a man, and for a woman, it's women are more delicate. They're more emotional beings. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. It's like they just need enough of it being modeled to them to show them that the masculine, which is this strong, powerful, protective being, just he needs to humble himself, and then it opens her up to feeling more safe. It's like when I tell my wife I made a mistake, that is her love language. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I say, I made a mistake. It's like when I'm sitting there saying, I know better than you, or you don't know what you're talking about, or even that's how it comes across. Like, let me just tell you the reason this is happening rather than I made a mistake. Now, how often is someone talking to you and they tell you something about what you did? How often are we justifying what we did and making excuses?
Right. Right.
What if I don't have to make any excuses?
Right. Right.
What if I could just take the information that's coming down the pipe and just say, okay, hey, I made a mistake. Like, why were you late to this meeting? Like, if someone's late to a meeting, like, why were you late to this meeting? Instead of realizing that real safety is in God, okay? God made this moment happen. It needs to happen this way. And saying, I'm trusting the process. And instead of saying, when someone says, why were you late to me? And me saying, well, the kids and the this and the that, I says, yeah, made a mistake. I'm really sorry. I didn't plan well. Do you know how amazing that message is
Wow.
versus the other one,
Right.
which makes you feel like this egotistical person that can't really just share why you were late and you need to justify and defend yourself? The person feels less connected to you. It's like, oh, so I was sitting here for 5 minutes, and even though it's only 5 minutes, I should just say that, okay, you're allowed to make excuses and my time doesn't matter? What if you just own it and say, hey, buddy,
You made a mistake.
I screwed up. I
Yeah.
really didn't plan well. I'm sorry.
Right. Right.
That's the end of discussion. But if you say, "Oh, I went to bed late and I was up doing this, and my kid was driving me up the wall today, and the carpool and the this and the that," and whoa, where are you
It's
going?
it's interesting as you're saying that when someone makes excuses, even if they're legitimate excuses, what it tells me, the receiver, is that you don't value me. You don't value my time. You don't value our relationship. But if you just came to me and said, "Yeah, I knew I should have showed up at 10:30 and I'm sorry I made a mistake." It's much more comforting to hear that. It's much more respectful. It feels much better.
So excuses are armor, and vulnerability is connection.
Wow.
That's what it comes down to.
Right. Right. So, as we're wrapping this up, what do you see in men today, in today's world? Like, what's the biggest challenge for men today, and not just people that are hitting rock bottom? I'm talking about your average man that's working a 9 to 5 job, making a good living, trying to support his family. What's his biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge that I feel of most men today is, like I said, living life from the outside in, but you won't necessarily see that. Where you'll see it is what I call integrity. Is what you say is what you do. There's this concept in God which says Ein Koya Chaser Poil. That said Lamaila. That says that when God thinks about something, it happens. There's no like God thought something up. That was a bad thought, or He did something. Forget about that. God's speech created the world, which means that what we say is what we do is our most masculine quality because we become godly. Imagine how disconnected we are. I say I'm going to do this and I show up late, or um, I'm a day later than I expected, or my son says pick me up at school for him there at 4:30. So what happens is I'm disconnected from my speech. I'm disconnected from really what I say I'm going to do. And a lot of men are like that. There's problems with commitment, problems with decisions, problems with being professional, problems with being someone that you would look at a man and you would say, wow, this guy's a rock. He really has his stuff sorted out. And it's very hard to find someone that is that person. And so when you become that rock, you motivate and inspire other men to do the same thing. In our workshop, it's like we say this thing because we want people to go inwards. It's like, I don't want you to live from the outside in anymore. I want you to live from the inside out. How do you do that? Silence. So a lot of the workshop is about being silent. Well, why do I have to be silent? Because I have to be able to understand where I'm generating my life from. When I say I'm going to commit to something and I don't, well, that shows up in your image, but you're not even aware of why you're saying those words. It's like you're so disconnected from those words. So when you go into the silence, you become more aware of where you're generating your life from. Now, imagine I said to my staff, we're going to maintain silence, just like the participants who are coming are going to maintain silence to teach them how to approach life. And then my staff on a workshop are talking. Well, that breaks down the entire integrity, which breaks down the sacredness of what we're trying to build over here. So I think as men, our most important tool is integrity. Say what you mean and do what you say. And if you can't, then really tune in and share where you're at. Now, it doesn't mean you got to be perfect. If you say, I'm going to be there at 9 and you show up at 9:05, just own it. Integrity means not necessarily being perfect, but saying, I messed
Right.
up.
Right.
That's what's integrity. I was supposed to be, I said I was going to be, and I wasn't. Okay. Now you owned it. Now you have a chance of being better. If you hide behind excuses, what's the chance you're going to be late next time?
Right. It's going to be I'm going to make another excuse.
So what the world is waiting for us to do is to be men of integrity. That's what I think the main message is. To be a man of integrity, you got to be connected to yourself. To be connected to yourself, you have to work through some of the stuff to realize that you are disconnected in certain areas of your life, that you are living from the outside in, that the world has more of an influence on you than you have on yourself, which means you almost gave the keys to the world rather than holding the keys in yourself, which means I can now create the life that I want. When the world is dictating, I don't get to create the life. I have to live based on what the world demands from me and pressures me.
Wow. So to finish off, you're basically taking the keys that you've given to the world. You're taking the keys back
That's it.
and taking more ownership of your life.
You take the keys back, that's called the beginning of working on yourself.
Wow. It's a good ending.